This dude has to have executive orders explained to him. Could you imagine if Biden sat there and signed a bunch of executive orders and had no clue what he was signing? They always have to explain it to him like he's a child and it's for his first time hearing these executive orders. Okay, I'm sorry, but we have an idiot as our president. I'm not just saying that because I'm a biased liberal hack or whatever. We genuinely have an idiotic person in the Oval Office, and he demonstrates that time and time again. He just showed us that he doesn't understand the fundamental military and economic alliances that the U.S. is engaged in or that our adversaries are engaged in. He obviously does not understand the importance of NATO, but we know for a fact that he doesn't even know what BRICS is. He doesn't know what BRICS stands for, and he doesn't know any of the countries that are in the economic alliance of BRICS, and he just illustrated that one more time in the Oval Office. And it's honestly embarrassing at this point. It's embarrassing that the leader of our country is telegraphing to our adversaries that, number one, he's an idiot, number two, he's transactional, he's blatantly transactional. And number three, he's such a transactional idiot that he ends up being impressionable at the end of the day. I mean, this dude is so impressionable that he can spew QAnon, Russia-aligned conspiracy theories after one talk with Vladimir Putin. So I'm not going to rant any longer. Let's jump into some of the clips from today. All that I ask is that you drop a like, drop some blue hearts. And before we jump into the big one, I want to show you this incredibly embarrassing clip for JD Vance. He tried to spew some borderline Russian talking points today in Munich, and nobody clapped. I mean, at that point, I would just rather get booed. Literally 2 or 3 people clapped after he said this terrible point. Let's debunk the point and watch this clip.
We're at the point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors. Now, as I understand it, the argument was that Russian disinformation had infected the Romanian elections. But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with.
All right, JD Vance has almost an offensively simplistic view on how Russian propaganda works. They have been refining their PSYOP techniques, their psychological operations, since the Cold War. And ever since 2014, they have been investing billions and billions, I'm pretty sure tens of billions of dollars in their information warfare or disinformation warfare, lies, whatever you want to call it. They try to undermine democracy, not with a few $100,000 of Facebook ads, but by undermining the trust in democracy, the fundamental trust. So when you can split the citizens of a country and make sure that they're at each other's necks, and you can spread Islamophobia while also spreading anti-Semitism, if you can spread misogyny while also spreading racism, and just make sure that a country is less cohesive and distrustful of their own government, then you can install your own populist puppet, and look what happened. Americans were so distrustful of our government due to largely Russian disinformation. And of course, inflation didn't help, but I think a lot of it is the online social media atmosphere where Russia can just pump out disinformation and destabilize a democracy. And the fact that JD Vance and Donald Trump barely even view Russia as a threat is incredibly worrisome. It raises a few questions about where their alliances truly lie, but also it just means they're simplistic. They don't have the foresight to understand how corrosive it is to our democracy whenever Vladimir Putin undermines the trust in our elections. Or actually, scratch that. Donald Trump is worse than Vladimir Putin when it comes to undermining trust in our elections. They work hand in hand. That's probably why JD Vance has his eyes completely closed when it comes to the threat of Russian propaganda. But just know, that is a grossly simplistic view on how Russian propaganda works. Take a look at this clip of Trump signing an executive order, and then the media asks him, this has to be enforced by the Department of Education, right? And Trump just takes the bait without realizing that he just said he'll abolish the Department of Education. This keeps happening.
COVID and schools. Lindsay?
Yep. So this first executive order, it prohibits federal funding for COVID-19 mandates, vaccine mandates in schools.
Okay, and that will meaning they want to clear that up. the discrepancy.
So any schools that require students to be vaccinated with COVID-19 shot, then there's no more federal funding.
This dude has to have executive orders explained to him. Could you imagine if Biden sat there and signed a bunch of executive orders and had no clue what he was signing? They always have to explain it to him like he's a child, and it's for his first time hearing these executive orders. But I just want to skip forward. After Trump signs the executive order, which he just read he didn't even read, he just heard about for the first time, he gets asked, who will have to enforce this? Just listen.
Okay, that solves that problem.
Sir, will the Department of Education have to handle that?
Yes, it'll go through the Department of Education.
Yes, it'll go through the Department of Education, which, by the way, I'm about to dismantle in a few days. He's done this with 3 or 4 different executive orders. He signed a few trans-related ones, vaccine-related ones, and then he'll say the Department of Education is going to enforce this. And then he'll say the next day he's going to abolish the Department of Education. It's complete incoherence. Let's watch this clip of Trump not even knowing what BRICS is. Like I said, it's embarrassing to have the leader of our country telegraphing his idiocy to our adversaries and to our allies as well.
BRICS, the BRICS nations, I think that's breaking up very rapidly. We said that if they're going to go and do anything to undermine the dollar, that includes China. I don't even know that they're a member of BRICS, but they had a few nations get together to try and play cute. And I said, we're going to put 100% tariff on every one of those nations. And at the mere thought of saying that, I think that's all broken up. That idea has no longer sailed. Now, that would be a terrible thing for our country. It would be bad for the world.
Okay, at the very minimum, the President of the United States should know what BRICS stands for. One of our largest adversaries creating an economic alliance. It's in the name. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and finally South Africa. But he should know that China is a part of BRICS as it was a founding member. It was there for the inception, but Trump is just throwing around terms without knowing what they mean, number one. But number two, he's just BSing his way through foreign relations. He's BSing his way through all of his policy. And it's actually quite scary. Like, listen to him talking about Russia last night.
When you look at Ukraine and when you look at the mess that they're in, it's got to be ended and it's got to be stopped. Now, Russia's taken over a pretty big chunk of territory. And they also have said from day one, long before President Putin, they've said they cannot have Ukraine be in NATO. They said that very strongly. I actually think that that was the thing that caused the start of the war. And Biden said it, and Zelensky said it, and I think that was one of the reasons.
Such a simplistic view. I won't even talk about this for long, but the reason why Ukraine wants to join NATO and move towards the West in the first place is because of Russia's aggression. So then Russia uses that as a pretext to be more aggressive and invade them even further. It's just a complete lie from Vladimir Putin that having NATO on his border is a threat, because I can point out the obvious reasons. NATO is a purely defensive alliance, number one. Number two, NATO has already existed on Russia's border in the form of the Baltic since 2004. Since 2004, NATO has been on Russia's border, so I don't buy that it's all of a sudden such a big threat you have to invade a completely sovereign country, coincidentally, as they get a new Western-aligned leader, Zelensky. So that's Trump just spewing Russian talking points, and I hope my debunk of that helped a little bit. I'll leave it there. Drop a like, subscribe. We're getting close to 1 million. Love all you guys. See you in the next video, and peace out.